Hey, it's Shaves. So obviously the video is making rounds, ranking literally every single anime ever. It's just Mal. You don't need to do that. 11 hours? I'm not doing that. In fact, I didn't even want to watch a single second of this thing. I don't want to hear the guy's voice. I am repulsed. Just not even to like, oh, the takes, oh, his top 10 is so normy, or like he has a bad take on this thing, or really what grinded my gears, like, no, is like complete dismissal and refusal to engage with anime as a medium. And by that I mean just like only taking certain things is because I don't like them. And that's fine to be honest about that, but that's not very useful to very many people. Like the utility of making a video like this is for you, like I see this as a stunt. I see this as just like it's several people have done this kind of video already. And the thing about it, what makes me frustrated about it is that it is appealing. There is a pull or an intrigue. I think a lot of us, I don't know, maybe I don't give a shit about that. Okay. Look, like I think one of the best qualities of anime and the anime community in particular is our constant drive and desire to learn more and find out more about this stuff and where can I get more. And that's why we have entire comprehensive databases, several, and you can choose between them. Like you have options. It's incredible. Like this whole databasing thing is a core aspect. Now, like his approach, I don't even want to really approach this video just from what I've seen of it. I don't want to make my fucking blood boil. But what I was noticing was like when I made the tweet, this is a compilation video. Like I guess he had the idea to start with watching every single isekai because the horror, and clearly that worked, like 1 million views. And then is like, well, do the next popular thing, shonen, and then he probably got a lot of demand and did seinen. And then by that point he's getting pretty close to 1,000, although he's not. I don't think he's really watching all of them. Anyway, I don't want to assume. Okay, I'm not even watching the fucking video. I'm not listening to a damn second of it. But like, yeah, I just see this as content farming. I really like his very, very first video was doing all the Fujimoto manga and ranking them. And then he did it all for Ito. This is just a trend. This is just a, game YouTube. It's playing YouTube like a video game because it's fun to see number go up. But like, I guess the reason I'm so viscerally like, with this video is, not so much of like certain takes of everyone else, but it's because like I've had this idea because obviously I have, but I actually wrote an outline of how I would do such a thing, and it wouldn't be like, obviously I could make a video, and I was thinking it would be interesting. I was literally just thinking about this morning. If you gave 1 minute for 1,000 anime, you only have 1 minute to like talk about why you're including it in this video. And that's another thing that I fucking hate about this video, that I've already kind of through osmosis, just looking at the time codes in the description, is that the 1,000 anime includes stuff that he just doesn't like and like calls like Diddy core or something, like pedo shit. Stupid and like awful. Like God, what's a whole number, right? Like a nice number for the video thumbnail and stuff. 17 hours is 1,020 minutes. So if you did 1 minute per 1,000 anime, then you have exactly 20 minutes to explain what your process was and then go into it. I think that'd be a fun video. This is the shit that I do. This is my brain. I mean, this is you're listening to the guy who read the entire anime encyclopedia and went through an entire movie to compare the sub and the dub. But I do feel like there's a demand or an intrigue, or people do kind of want to see a video like 1,000 anime of like the best, or what I would think of like most essential. So instead of reacting to this video in any capacity, I wanted to present my potential plan of doing something like, how would you go about doing this? Because I think this is interesting, and I had this written out when I was actually going to do Twig. It's backward. Or maybe I flipped. One of my initial ideas was to present something like this, and Nate didn't see it think it was very interesting. So, and it also just wasn't very compatible with what the other lectures are, which is this franchise 101 type of thing. Yeah, the idea of this is that it's purely a collection. It's not a ranking. There wouldn't be the list and the people berate your top 10 or something like that, because then like boiling it down to that when you do all this work, it does kind of suck. This would not be that. The 1,000 that would be presented in this list is stuff that like matters and we genuinely care about in a way that like it has value and is worth being on a curated list. And this is about purely developing such a collection. I'm not going to do this right now or in the I don't know. Or if someone has intrigue in this, I would want to do it with more people, like a community or something, if there's actual interest. But the idea of 1,000, it's big. It's a lot of anime, but it's not too big. It's not Mal. We're not just recreating Mal, right? You're just trying to, you make the list, you make it too big, then you're just listing every anime ever, which is what this would be. And you can't actually do that because there are a good chunk of anime that you can't watch. It's not a database. It's a curation, right? And this is an idea I also had because like the idea of completing 1,000 anime, I'm at like 892 or something. That feels like a nice milestone. And it's not a milestone that this guy seems to have really actually hit, because the impression several people have gotten that I've been seeing is that like it doesn't sound like he's actually finished any of these. Like he did the first 1 to 3 episodes, however many. Like he doesn't really confirm that he actually finished the ones that he talks about, which is shitty. And that's also why I wouldn't want to like outright do this, because I haven't even seen 1,000 anime, and I definitely wouldn't put all 1,000 of my completed anime on such a list, right? But the idea was that like once I complete 1,000 anime, I'm actually going to go back and cull anime I don't actually care about or like that I watched, but I'm like, I don't care that I watched this. I'm going to like basically forget it. And put it on like a separate list that like I did watch it, but like I don't care that I watched it, right? And also maybe like condensing, because Attack on Titan takes up like 8 spots or something, and just put one just to prune it and go under 1,000. So then I work my way back up to 1,000 and do it again until you refine it, and eventually you get something like this. And you've actually watched them. But anyway, another reason like I think this is interesting to people, like to just fans, is just that like you have these like anime charts, right? You got like the recommended. It's again like for newcomers especially, navigating like what's that, and like seeing a poster of Haibane Renmei for the first time, you're like, what the fuck is that? You know. And I still feel that way. I'm actually separate thing. I did a database for like and I'm still in the process of it actually, for the separate idea I had, but I ended up going through Mal's seasonal charts from 1958 to 2009 and looking at all the features, like all the anime features, movies and stuff and specials and whatever. And I made a list of like 275 features that I had just flat out either never heard of or don't know pretty much anything about or haven't really heard anyone say anything about. And then cull them into like, I'm interested to watch this or not. For reasons that you don't have to know yet. My what I remember as a new fan was the Enlightenment chart. This was a chart on Hummingbird with they have groups. Although I guess they apparently stole it from Mal. I don't know the full story. It's been years, obviously. But it was a group on Hummingbird called Elitist and Superior Tastes. Yeah. Anime elitism, throwing it back, because this was like 2013, 2014, 2015, I'd say. Now the pros of a thing like this was that it really helped me get into and explore anime more. The activity of the group was decide what would go on this chart, and there was actually a little like these titles used to be on this chart and then they were moved to off the main chart in place of something else. And I believe it was like specifically 100 titles or maybe 50 titles. Doing that, culling and making it an active thing, you take this stuff seriously. Taking the anime fandom and exploring it and what's good and what's not good in your opinion and stuff like that. When you take this stuff seriously, the deeper you go into it and the more you end up loving it and stuff, I think. And the longer you're in it, and the more you take away from it, I guess. And then there's community in that with the voting and discussion and stuff like that. This sort of like interaction and posting things and getting comments and sharing stuff, the things that are happening, that this video, the good thing that's coming from it is that it's getting people to It's getting clout. People are getting dunking on it, yeah, but like I just think it is warranting interesting discussion. It is certainly prompting me to make a video like this. The cons of the list, though, is like obviously there's a very particular taste, and yeah, I have some disagreement of that, and like taste varies and stuff. Like I don't remember if there was any magical girl anime on that elitist chart besides Madoka. I know, you know what? Cardcaptor Sakura was on the elitist chart. Yeah, that's right. And that's just cringe. That's just really ugh. Like, or I don't know how much shoujo there was. Yeah, and then there was more time thinking and talking about the existing titles rather than exploring new ones. We were debating of like this should be on here or not, rather than like what could be on here and going out and like finding stuff really. And that's because there wasn't really any parameters. Anything could be on here. It didn't matter. There was no balancing. There was no this amount of these titles, or there's too much 70s or 80s anime. That's never going to happen. That just doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. Sorry. Screw watching it. This is more fun, right? Like, screw watching anime. Like, talking about it and categorizing and databasing and moving stuff around and making collages is very fun, to the point where people are like, wait, I should be watching anime too. Right. It's a common, at least I find it to be a common trap, I guess, when you get into this kind of fandom thing. And of course, the whole thing about elitist and superior taste, we're talking about elitism. A little bit of it helps. I'm not talking about like gatekeeping anime. Like sometimes I do feel that way for sure, but I certainly wouldn't want to be gate kept as a new. Like, you think about your first time watching anime and stuff, and getting to really, no one can stop you from watching this stuff. You can't. So gatekeeping, is it like just close your eyes, bro? Like, how is cyberbullying real? Just close your eyes, right? I just think a little bit of it helps in terms of, again, when I was talking about the discernment, taking it very seriously, really participating in discussion and enriching yourself, I guess, and it's not just a passive thing. But too much of it, which is very easy, can become very toxic. The three main things about, ultimately, because like elitism ultimately is not a good thing in my opinion, and I'm happy that I was able to work my way out of my elitism phase before I started making YouTube videos. Oh god. What I was realizing with elitism is that first of all, it's ultimately a negative environment. It's endless shitting on what's bad. This is my experience. You have endless shitting on what's bad, never giving it a chance, never even like making a bunch of presumptions about it, generalizations, and groupthink, and it's just reductive, completely reductive, and it's just criticism until you're blue, right? And you're giving all your takes and your little nitpicks, and I don't have a problem with it. Like I realized with like trying to work my way out of my elitism phase is like, don't fucking dwell on that shit. Like, why are we still talking about Frozen, bro? Like, if you didn't like the movie, just like, it was just a funny thing. Like, when Frozen came out, I remember spending many months just like texting people or like talking to people about how much I hated Frozen or had problems with Frozen. But like, who gives a fuck? Like, honest to God. And you know, if you have a point towards it of like what we can think about media writ large, sure. But like, I don't know. The idea of that being a criticism till you're blue in the face is just like silly to me, I guess. Not that criticism is bad or any, not at all. But it's that's why we always preface it with constructive criticism. But then there's also a lot of faux positivity, I think, with elitism. The good stuff gets taken for granted and underexplored. LOGH, it's good. We don't have to talk about it. We know, it's good. Yeah, it has the you know, like little buzzword key points of why it's so good, but then you don't actually explore it. You don't actually make analysis videos about it. You don't like really engage with it in the same way. And that's a facet of anime fandom that's important. This like more like popular mainstream stuff is getting more analysis and stuff. Why can't like this elitist, you know, talk more about Flying Luna Clipper? Like, where's the video on Flying Luna Clipper? You know, this probably exists. I just haven't been looking for it. Ultimately, the worst thing about this is elitism is an Ouroboros. I've seen people, and I won't say who, you know who, they whittle down what they consider good because they find problems in these other shows and then realize that the shows that they like also have these problems and they want to have some principles or something. So those shows are no longer good in their mind, even though they once thought they were good. And that elitism of like trying to be objectively correct or whatever list gets narrower and narrower and narrower until it's like you don't care for it at all. Like, oh, all anime is shit because it all does, you know. And this again, like the negative environment, endless shitting, that infects the good stuff, especially because of the faux positivity, because you're taking it for granted and you're not reinforcing why you like it so much. Yeah. So fuck elitism for real. For real. Although there's some value to it that we should take away from it. What are we actually doing? So here's the rules, and no rankings. It would be alphabetical. don't give a fuck. Or just like in the categories that we're talking about here. There's some way to organize it that's appealing, but there's no ranking really. There's no finality to this list. That's the other thing, because time passes. We're going to have another decade after this, right? More anime can come out. And this is also community driven. It wouldn't just be one person's list. The reason that there was no finality is that it's a constant work in progress. And maybe that's shitty. Maybe that feels bad to people. But like, you're constantly swapping things in and out with other things, because once it's static, it's done. It's done. There's no one wants to say anything. It might have some fervor for a week or a month, but it doesn't have a lasting thing. Projects like this don't have a lasting impact the way, you know, in the way that memes do, right? Some person draws the 3x3 meme and that's like, you know, reference to death or whatever. Individual videos, they have a shelf life. You know, people can come back to them and that's great. There's some evergreen content, but come on. I mean, they age, right? But yeah, like if you're not growing, you're dying. As nice as it would be to have some final, and we've settled the debate type of deal, time moves on and it ages, and so you'd want to be able to try to like adapt and update and change things and critique as we realize there's imbalances here and there. So I like being an ongoing project. And it's not about quality. I mean, in some ways it is, right? Like, you don't want like stuff that nobody cares about. Just because a show is the first one that did something, it doesn't deserve merit that sort of thing. Like there just have to be some merit of quality to it. But I don't want it to feel like it's objective necessarily. We want to have this to feel like it's good, but also realize what we're doing this for is for curation, is for other fans to really like, oh, this is what anime is. You know what I mean? And not just like finding stuff on the surface and the more popular mainstream stuff, I guess. If all of it's presented equally, right? I try to want to avoid like best qualifiers in this, especially because also like I would think Code Geass deserves a consideration to be on that list. I don't like Code Geass. You know, if it was up to me, I don't want it to be about that, because there's certain classics that everyone considers good that others might not, and there are anime, surprise that maybe a lot of people don't consider that good, but really matters and is really important and is a big reason that anime is the way it is today, unfortunately, for better or worse, right? I also don't have any strict definitions of what's considered anime, or there's also genre ambiguity. Like, I don't want to define certain things. Like this isn't a people splitting hairs of what certain things are or aren't enough of one thing or another or something. I don't want to deal with that shit. It's just pedantic. For what's considered anime, right, I'm also trying to avoid the whole Mal drama of like not putting Scott Pilgrim on there. Come the fuck on. Yeah, like I know it when I see it, basically, is the idea. I have 5 parameters, and we'll go through each of these parameters. This is kind of the meat of the thing. There's going to be a lot of math and percentages and proportions and tallies of stuff, a minimum, maximum of certain numbers. All of those are fluid. Like, I'm just spitballing, putting it out there, and it's for the sake of engaging and like making it challenging, making it interesting, making it curated, and not simply like listing 1,000 of the top off the top of your head. Oh, I forgot this one or whatever. it is sort of like, okay, find this amount of this title, of this genre, of this creator. Besides the hard 1,000 anime, any number or percentage I put on here assume to be totally fluid and arbitrary. It is just a starting base of like, say it's this many. And I'll probably say that over and over to really emphasize that. So I apologize in advance. Now, it turns out, here's the first nerdy math related thing. The number 1000 has 16 factors. So like 8 multiples. You like 1 in 1,000, 2 in 500, but 990 has 24 factors. So it's 12 multiples. So that actually allows us to split things up better, to like make more like into nice, more neat bunches if we want. So that made me think, and I don't really think this actually goes anywhere, like the 990. When I read this through again, now that I was looking at it, I'm like, the 990 doesn't really come up at all. But I think just 990 would be a better number to work with ultimately because of those factorial factors, the multiples. So you just take 10, and it's kind of appealing. It's a kind of appealing idea, I guess. The 990 is what you're working on, and then you can take 10 out of the total, and these 10 are the wildcard spots that are free of any parameter. Like, it doesn't matter if like there's too many, because the parameters is to say that like you have an appropriate number of anime from the 70s, you have an appropriate number of titles from this genre, etc., etc. But these 10 could be kind of separate from that, and you could call those your top 10 potentially if you do this yourself, type of deal. Again, I like the idea of doing it with other people, but anyway, so let's go through those 5 parameters, and there's nothing after these 5 parameters. This is the meat here. So the first one would be decade. Now, why is that? For me, it's like the pivotal bucket and category thing for anime. It's like 60s anime, 80s anime. Like, that's such a neat, easy to understand, relevant topic. It's relevant in the way that like, it represents where anime was at that period of time. Genres change, formats change, focuses change, staff change. There's so much influence and character with each decade that you want it to be kind of fairly represented with each one, and not be like this guy and not watch pretty much any anime from before 1980. Apparently. So we'll go pre-1963. So before Astro Boy, before anime became really commercial then mainstream. Pre-1963, you got a bunch of shorts, you got the World War II stuff, again, the early Toei films. And then you have 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, 2020s. There's 8 in the decade for 8 categories. 990. So let's try, do an even number of anime per decade. Completely, even. 990 divided by 8 is about 124 anime. And do you really think you could come up with 124 anime from before 1963? Or 124 1960s anime? I didn't do the count myself, but I don't think you can. You would basically be counting the entire decade at that point. So proportion matters. Of the amount of anime that was made per decade matters here, within reason, obviously, because there's no way I, or maybe someone else will, but they might get it wrong, is going to count exactly how many were per decade. You could certainly spend the time doing that. I'm not doing that. Keep in mind that the data here is inflated in the 2010s and 2020s as well, because when people are counting things, by the time in the 2010s and 2020s, instead of airing an unbroken 24 episode show, they would sometimes split it and air the first chunk, the first 12 episodes, and then a couple months later air the next one. And those would count as 2 separate titles on MAL. Whereas if this show was made in the 90s, it would probably just be one title. And even the other thing, because it's like, in the 80s, the OVA was, video home media. So that's an explosion in the 80s, but not so much in the 70s and stuff. We'll start at, so I believe what happened, I was like, what the fuck are these numbers? So we start at the bottom, and those are each of the categories. If you split them evenly, 124, they say that's like the baseline, right? I ended up getting the numbers taken from this Reddit post of how many TV anime there were. This is just TV anime. and then you divide that by the total number of the TV anime, and so you see the percentages there. 39% of all TV anime, at least according to this number, came out in the 2010s. Awesome. And again, that's kind of inflated, right? At least it's probably, maybe it isn't. I don't remember how I got these, where these numbers came from. I don't know what the total is. I'm not going to do it right now. Sorry. But like basically from this, I was thinking like, okay, again, this is arbitrary, just an idea. You say you do just 5% of the total of 1,000 or 990 would be from the pre-1960s, 5%, 10%, 15, 15, 20, 25%, and 5. And of course, that can fluctuate a lot. You could probably make 2020s a bit bigger. Basically, yeah, this totals 990. So 50 anime from pre-1960, 50 from the 1960s, 100 anime from the 1970s, 150 from the 80s, 150 from the 90s, 200 from the 2000s, 240 from the 2010s, and 50 from the 2020s. And that would just be able, you'd be able to be representative as fairly as you can be grand stretch of anime, because a lot of anime is being made right now. So I think that does have to have some proportionality to it, but maybe not, because anime was better in the 90s, etc. And yeah, like that really doesn't encourage people like, oh god, we have to find 50 or however many. 50 might even be too big for pre-1960s and 60s. So then you just make, okay, let's go 25, and we'll throw 25 into the 90s. So now you have to find 175 or whatever. You know, just proportionality like that. Again, it's fluid numbers, but taking that into consideration of like the process of what it was. The next category is length. So the length in terms of like how, this is the answer to the question, how many movies are we putting in here? How many shorts are we putting in here? And of course, TV series. But not format. I'm talking about length. I'm talking about minutes or like episode counts, not necessarily like TV versus OVA, because you know the formats have changed over time. They don't really make OVAs anymore. They just put them on like online or something, and it's just fluctuated over time. The container in terms of like it's a movie or it's a 2-episode OVA, I feel like that influences the content. So I do think that there should be some fair representation of those sorts of things. And again, you could have to maybe look into like how many of these are there, right? Of like how many anime shorts are there? How many movies are there? And that's yikes. I mean, that's Mal, but like I don't know if Mal even has numbers like that. I don't know if there's maybe there is. But yeah, so I put that into different categories here. I have 0.5, which is shorts, 1 for movies, 2 to 4 means limited specials and OVAs. 5 to 15 I've called longer running OVAs / one core anime. 16 through 60 accounts for half a year, so 2 core anime to a full year. Extending it up to 60 a little bit, just because there's obviously some anime with some weird number titles, and this is all fluid. It's just like, yeah, I'm spitballing. And this category could also be split into like the 2 cores and the 4 cores, right? But where do the 3 cores go? That's where I was thinking like, okay, maybe because there isn't as many 3 cores at all. Like there's a couple, but there's way more 2 cores and 4 cores. But where do you put the 3 cores? So I kind of put those together almost. But maybe maybe put 2 and 3 together and 4, but which one has more? Which one do you put the 3 with? Things to consider. Up to 2-year anime. For 61 episodes to 124 episodes. Again, the 125 maybe it's just 61 to 100, basically ones that are very perpetual and keep running week to week until they go out. Yeah, so there's different categories like that, and I do think each of those influence the kind of anime that it is, right? So what if it's like 100 plus episodes, but they're half length? Like, what do you do with like a Detroit Metal City, which is 12 episodes, but each one's only half length, like 13 minutes instead of a full episode length, like 24 standard. So I was thinking like they're almost like weight classes. If it's below or above a total runtime, it would move up or down a group. So you establish it as like it starts in this group, but if you do a check of, oh, this one happens to have an unusual runtime, then you can put it above and below. So 0.5 is just under 30 minutes. So if it's a short and it's over 30 minutes, I would consider it a movie. But maybe you make that 45 minutes because 45 is considered a feature film. So maybe under 45 minutes. But I don't want to consider like the 1 episodes, right? Like there's certain OVAs that are a single episode length, I don't really want to call those shorts necessarily, right? So I think that's why I put it under 30 minutes. 30 minutes to doesn't really matter. If it's a single installment, it's still one installment. I consider that a movie. So like if it's a 125 episode anime, but the total runtime is below 1,500 minutes, it'll go down to one of those other ones. If it's like a 2 minute times, if it's like Instant History, right, which is like a 2 minute, I think it's 2 or 3 minute episodes times 1,000 or something. And then this gets even more complicated, and you're like, this is just so many dumb rules. I'm like, oh, why have to do all this? This is again for curation and for intrigue to really. It's like a puzzle. I don't think I said that earlier. It's less like a collage and like make a cool little like a big thing like the elitist chart, and it's more like a puzzle. It's fun to be like, I wonder if I can put it here, and this one's this many, and I like that shit. Okay, so this is why it's like this. It's challenging. It's interesting. It isn't just me listing important anime, whatever. Like if I put this here, this show could fit into this or whatever. I don't know. It's fun. Anyway, this looks dumb. I will admit this looks really stupid. It looks like a little excessive. Okay, but like each decade, this is how it would correspond. Like each decade is caters its own proportions of length. Because you think about it, right? There was no 2-episode OVA thing in pre-1960s. Or like a 125 episode thing. Like how many movies do you put per decade, basically, right? So yeah, in this instance, if we are doing 50 anime from pre-1960, 75% of that, again, this is all arbitrary numbers, so 30, we'll say rounded up to 37, would have to be shorts. We'd do 37 shorts and 13 movies or installments, like 1 to 120, however long that is. Obviously, if there's not 13 good enough movies, then it is, maybe put that lower. But yeah, again, this is to encourage and to show that we're considering these sorts of things. The 70s, 25 movies, one installment, 5 either the shorts / the 2 to 4, and the 2 to 4 I don't think happens very often in the 70s, so that's why I put that there. So I kind of bulk those together, and those will have 5 shorts, and I don't think there's that many shorts really in the 70s. But then 70 or 70% would be the TV series, like 5 to 125, whatever. Again, that's just to give a fair balance that there's just the right amount of movies, I guess. But of course, if you only know if it's the right amount of movies if you know how many movies came out in that thing. So yeah, when the 90s happened, there's more 125 stuff happening, and then there's less 125 stuff happening in later decades. So it's something you consider there. In the 90s, we'll do 8 shorts, 23 movies, 22 2 to 4, 22 1 cores, 75, and then 75 as a total of like 2 cores, 4 cores, or 4 plus core, or 8 core, I guess, 61 to 124. I have to have better names for these. And then 120, 50% of the 2010s will be the 1 cores, because a shit ton of 1 cores. That's where all the 1 cores come out in the 2010s. The third parameter is IP, franchises. So how do we handle second seasons and remakes and spin-offs? It's kind of the answering to that sort of thing. And this is a bit, IP is more of a, because we don't know how many, there could be countless IPs in the medium, so there's no numbers in this one. It's more like explanation of how to handle this sort of thing. Generally would go on a title by title basis. You have to understand what you're you're curating, right? So you can't just be like, you have to understand what this thing is. So you have to understand that Attack on Titan is a narrative. It's an ongoing narrative. So if season 1 to final season is telling one long story, that should just be one entry. You can just put that as one. Attack on Titan doesn't have to take up 8 slots. And I would imagine like that's what the creator did with his 11-hour video. He's probably just lumping all of Attack on Titan as one series. This is his favorite series of all time. Awesome. I love Attack on Titan, don't get me wrong, but of course you could get clowned if you so sorry. When you do that season 1 to final season, Attack on Titan is an 89 episode show, or 90 episode, I don't remember, and it takes the decade slot of the first installment. So Attack on Titan would be a 2013, so it would count as a 2010s show, even though there are installments of it that came out in the 2020s. And that's broadcast, not chronologically, obviously. So for spin-offs, they would have their own separate entry. So they would be limited to 3 per franchise per decade. By that I mean the longer a franchise has run, the more it's earned potential spots. So Gundam, you could get 3 per decade. So 3 per franchise per decade, meaning 3 Gundam titles from the 1980s, 3 Gundam titles from the 1990s, 3 from the 2010, 3 from the 2000s, 3 from the 2010s is like the max, not the minimum. Like, put every Gundam in. No, maybe don't do that. Really consider that. But it's like, maybe don't put just the first Gundam in there, right? Let's put a couple of Gundams. Maybe 3 is too much per franchise per decade. Maybe that's too generous. Or Lupin is a similar thing. So the examples of spin-offs and of what I'm talking about that count here, the franchise movies. So Pokemon. So I would put like the original Pokemon season, and because that is an ongoing show, you can kind of consider that all one entry, the Pokemon TV series. But then if you want to put the Pokemon the movie on there, the 1998 one, franchise movie would be its own installment. So Pokemon would take up 2 slots, and that's fine if you want to do that, but that would be per decade. So like you couldn't put every Dragon Ball movie because a lot of them came out in the 90s, right? So you'd have to pick alternate universe stuff. So Gundam and Precure is counted. So like Universal Century is one linear narrative. So I would consider original through Double Zeta at least. And I know Victory is part of Universal Century, and I believe Turn A is technically part of it too. But that's some discernment there. Obviously, I don't want to pull hairs too much, but just saying. But yeah, Precure, for example, right? You know what? Like 3 per franchise per decade. So you'd only get 3 Precures from the 2000s, 3 from the 2010s, and you can do 3 from the 2020s. But we'll get into Mahou Shoujo later. But yeah, all alternate universe stuff, and then side specials, OVAs, ONAs, picture dramas would all count as separate spin-offs, basically. Obviously, if it's continuing the story or whatever, like End of Evangelion, that's tough, right? Because I think franchise movie, like I think it's merited to have Evangelion and End of Evangelion as 2 separate entries, or Space Runaway Ideon and Space Runaway Ideon be invoked as 2 different entries, even though those are the finales of those respective TV shows. But maybe they don't. I'm not sure. This is what's fun about it, though. It's generating discussion. It's generating intrigue. Okay, as for remakes and new installments of a franchise, so you think of like Gegege no Kitaro, right?
I fucked up. I don't agree with currently. I wasn't getting feelings of that one. I didn't want to put it out there. TBA on remakes and continues. At first I was going to say like, oh, you can just kind of lump them together, because I consider like Lupin's TV series you could kind of 1 through 6 kind of put them together type of deal. But then no, I mean they do have their own differences and stuff, and I think there would be interesting discussion to be had if like put part 1 in there or part 2 or whichever one which installment is the best one. And if you want to put in multiple installments, that's another entry. I think that's interesting. And then you have a similar limitation of like 3 per franchise type of deal. But then it bleeds into like, okay, but like the continuity of like you put Gundam and Zeta Gundam and Double Zeta Gundam, I would say that, it's okay if they count as one type of deal. So this is obviously amorphous and not even a realized ongoing. This is a project that's happening. It's like a thought experiment. But yeah, I'm not totally sure with and I'm thinking, look, well, remakes you kind of like supplant the original, because I do think it would be interesting if like you put the 90s version and not the 2011 version, or which one do you pick? Yeah, I do think ultimately you get more interesting situations if you make the remakes or new installments their own separate individual entries, if they are genuine remakes or like episodic, like what batch of episodes do you pick, versus like we're continuing the story.
Creator is the next parameter. That's related to IP, and it's to encourage a broad variety of talent. And this is just kind of my favorite. This is the shit I love and I'm really into, of just like the people who work on this thing. 3 real categories. The 4th one, when I wrote it and I'm looking at it now, I'm just like, that seems very untainable and weird. The big ones are author/original creator, director, and studio. Now, obviously, they don't want to generalize studios and stuff, but it is easy to. They do have some commonalities with each other. We can't deny. The idea would be it's the author / original creator. You only get up to 5 entries. It's not flooded with one particular creator or author or something like that. The director is up to 3 per decade. So again, like the longer the career is, the better. That's still you end up with interesting situations like with Osamu Dezaki. If you want to put Ashino Joe on there, 2 is a continuation of 1. So it would be lumped to the 1970s. So you would count. So Joe would be 170s anime, and Dezaki gets 3 per decade. You have 2 spots, but your choices are Gamba, Ie Nakiko Nobody's Boy Remy, Takarajima, and Rose of Versailles. Oh, and Aim for the Ace. Oops. Yikes. So yeah, interesting. But then the decade going on, because if you just did 5 or 3 period, that's really hard. That's almost stiflingly hard, and it kind of ignores the long career of some of these guys. Like they should be merited of how long their career is and how prolific they are. So I think 3 per decade just makes it an even spread, and it just makes it interesting, I think. Because the thing is, right, this list could very easily just go like, do all the Tomino anime, do all the Miyazaki anime, do all the Kon anime. You have in the 2000s for Kon, you have Paprika, Millennium Actress, Tokyo Godfathers, and Paranoia Agent. You can only pick 3. Ooh, that's interesting, right? And in the studio, you do up to 5 per decade, which you really have a rough time with Madhouse in the 2000s. Which 5 do you pick out of, I don't know, 100 plus that they made? And then that you create balance, right? You don't just have 4 fucking buckets of isekai, battle shonen, seinen, and sci-fi. The other thing I wrote here, and I'm probably this is too much. Other creative leads up to 10. So you can do up to 10, not even per decade, just generally for art director, character designer, music, script writer, series comp or screenplay, and animation director. But that's probably too much because we're working with 1,000 anime and having to double check every character designer and everything like that. But that would make it more interesting of a database, wouldn't it? I just think those roles are very vital and interesting, and I would want to have them represented in some way. But that would make it very hard, of course. But yeah, this is really where you get to know who people that made it, and then be like, wow, this guy Morio, because it turns out what will happen is that you do this and you're like, oh yeah, like put all these anime that I really like, and then you realize like 8 of them or 10 of them are done by this one guy that not many people know about. Like that he's not a well-known name like Rintaro or something, but he constantly puts out peak. Like damn. And the last parameter would be genre. And it's the only parameter that deals directly with what the anime actually is. This whole time has been kind of the surrounding circumstances of the anime itself, because that's what's all of these parameters are universal. It's all the stuff that like you can pretty much give a category, for every single anime. But then genre is the actual time we're actually discussing the content. So I want to ignore broad categories like comedy, drama, action, adventure, fantasy, horror, sci-fi, mystery, and romance. Just very, very broad categories that can fit a lot of titles and stuff like that. I really wanted to use this as an opportunity also for genres, emphasize the ones that make anime what it is. Because there are anime genres that are so deliberate and specific to anime that really matter, that need that fair representation. So basically, I came up with 10 genres that are really massively important to anime as a medium, and you would do minimum of 5 per decade. So you have a minimum of 35. Now, it's only if the 5 per decade is only if it's applicable. If there genuinely isn't 5, or like the 5 that you got is like Astro Ganger, like okay, like there's certain ones that like, yeah, that could count, I guess, but it's not that important and could be taking up a slot that could better go to somewhere else type of deal. It's only if it's really applicable. If you only end up getting like 5 out of the possible 10, that's, it's not very curated, is it? So we completely excuse the pre-1960s from this parameter, because there just isn't that. These particular genres don't really exist. One of them definitely does, but a lot of them don't. Just kind of excuse the pre-1960s. So 5 times 7 decades. And again, when we get to the 2030s, this will all proportion down, right? And that's why it's an ever-growing, developing list. Minimum of 5, no more than 10. Because you obviously don't want to swamp it with 376 isekai. Don't want to make your list a third isekai. Just trying to avoid that. 35 minimum, 70 maximum of mecha. 70 max mecha. I think that's very healthy and fair, but also curated. Like, you're gonna hit the ceiling and you're like, oop, have to cut some. There's gonna be some missing, type of deal. Mahou Shoujo, Iyashikei, Spokon, which is sports anime, historical Japan, ecchi, gag comedy, music, Yuri/Yaoi, the gay stuff, and dementia. The dementia being that, on Mal is a tag, and it's silly. It's like, what exactly counts as dementia? Like, what kind of category is that? But you know what I mean. You know the titles I'm talking about. And again, only if applicable, right? But yeah, these are the 10 genres that I think really deserve that healthy representation. If you do this, if you adhere to this, the minimum 35 times 10, that's 350 of the anime. But the maximum 70 of these 10 is 700. And so you're left with another 300 anime that don't fit into any of these, which should be okay. I think that's fair. And then so you have a minimum of 3 total, doesn't matter the decade, of these 10 genres that are also very specific to, anime, but like, I don't think there's as many of them, or they're more of a fad, like more of a lot more came out in this decade than this other decade. Like, isekai is not a popular genre until the 2010s, really. I think the other 10 genres have more of a even stretch over the whole thing. Obviously there's more ecchi in the 90s onwards, but yeah. Harem, cute girls doing cute things. Isekai, gourmet anime, gurume, idol anime, racing. It's actually a lot of racing anime, and it doesn't get talked about at all, but there's a fair deal of it. So we should have at least 3 of those, I think. Delinquent, parody, martial arts, and hentai. Those are the 10 that I can. Maybe there's better ways of which genres would be better picks, but yeah. And then we're like, wait a minute, but where's like the shonen shoujo? Yeah, so that's a separate thing. Apart from the genre stuff, you also want a kind of an evener, considered, curated distribution of source material. Shonen manga, minimum of 30, maximum of 100 shonen manga. Shoujo manga, minimum of 30, maximum 100. Seinen, minimum 30, maximum 100. Josei, there's only 157 total josei, apparently, at least according to Mal. So, I mean, a maximum of 100 it's like almost all of them. So a minimum of 20 for josei manga. There just isn't as many of them, so that's why. Kodomo manga, there's a lot of kids anime, but like kids manga adaptations, not as many. So minimum 20, maximum 100. Light novels, web stuff, minimum of 30, maximum 100. Visual novels, minimum 20, maximum 100. And this is all arbitrary, fluid. I spit out a number. Mixed media, just other projects or kind of other miscellaneous. Minimum 20, maximum 100. And then anime original, I really like a minimum of 100 anime original projects. I just think that makes sense. But yeah, that would be it. And it's like, where do we start, right? How do you go about doing this? That's where I stopped the draft, and that's where I'm going to pretty much stop this video. Do you give a shit? Are you happy? I hope that was more interesting than rage baiting at this 11-hour creation. Content. You know what? Content. That's what we're calling it. Content. Anyway, that's it for me. I should probably get back to doing my job or other things that I should be doing. You guys are great. Have a great day. Yo, peace.